Good morning. It's Monday morning, and I'm recording the shiur for tomorrow, for Tuesday morning. I hope that you all and your families are well. Everybody is being careful with all the precautions that need to be done so that we all come out of this, God willing, healthy and safe. I've told you many times in class that there's a pasuk in the Torah, Ki ha'adam eitz hasada. One could understand it, that man is like a tree. I've often explained to you that if you look at a tree grows from a small sapling to a mighty big tree, but it grows every day. It grows during the day and it grows during the night. It grows during the summer, it grows during the winter. It grows through all the times, but one thing it does is it grows consistently. It constantly spreads its roots to make its basis, its foundation stronger. Based on those roots, it grows its trunk, and its trunk grow branches, and the branches bear fruit. People are like that too. You grow from consistency. If you do what you need to do, and do the best you can every day, and do it in a consistent manner, you too can grow to greatness. These are times that are different. It's not school. It's not usual. There is disease in the street. There's economic pressures. But nevertheless, the tree needs to keep growing. Consistency needs to be consistency. And so, when there will be better times, the disease will have passed and people's economic conditions will improve, you'll come out so much stronger from having pedaled hard during the uphill to be able to gain even more speed when you'll be pedaling in easier times downhill. So let's learn. We're on Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. We have about 5 dapim till the end of the Masechta. God willing, we'll do it. A little at a time, every day. So we're on Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. We're approximately 6 lines before they get widest. It's V'chein b'maisreihen. 6 lines before they get widest, V'chein b'maisreihen. Just to get into the topic, yesterday we discussed a question, an iboyalu. They needed to know, can you sell a Sefer Torah in order to buy another Sefer Torah? Even for even. As Kodesh as there can be, for as Kodesh as there can be. The second Sefer Torah is waiting. There's no question of negligence that we're going to sell one and not buy the other. The Gemara never resolved the question. Therefore, the Rambam and Rif said that you cannot. The only thing the Gemara did say, which is interesting for us, is that you're allowed to sell a Sefer Torah in order to support yourself to learn Torah. Because what's more important than the Torah is learning Torah. Now let's get to the new topic. In the Mishnah it said 2 words, V'chein b'motreyan, the same as with the surplus money. For instance, if you sold an Aron Kodesh, a beautiful Aron Kodesh, and you got $30,000 for it. And for $25,000, you bought a Sefer Torah. Wonderful. What's with the other $5,000? So the Mishnah says that the surplus money must also be used for higher Kedusha. Of course, it's obvious that for $5,000, you're not going to be able to buy another Sefer Torah. But you put the $5,000 in the bank, in an account, and slowly but surely you build up more money. When you have enough, you'll buy another Sefer Torah. So v'chein b'mosreim, the same goes with the surplus money, that you have to use it for a higher kedusha. Amar Rava said, Lo shanu, we did not learn this law, that you must use the surplus money for higher kedusha, el shamachru. Only if you sold, let's say an Aron Kodesh for 30,000, you bought a Sefer Torah for 25,000, v'hosiru. Now you have extra money, 5,000 more. Avul gavu, but if you collected money for the purpose of a Sefer Torah, and you collected $30,000. V'hosiru, and you bought the Sefer Torah for 25, and now you have $5,000 extra. But this $5,000 never came from a Sefer Torah. It was just collected towards a Sefer Torah. Mutter, you're allowed to use the $5,000 for something of a lower kedusha. So again, what Rava says is, if you sold the Sefer Torah for 30, and if you sold an Aron Kodesh for 30, and you bought a Sefer Torah for 25, then the extra 5 must also be used for higher kedusha, because it came from an Aron Kodesh. But if you sold an Aron Kodesh, but if you collected money, even for a Sefer Torah, and you collected 30 and you bought it for 25, the other 5, you can do what you want with it. Eitvei Abaya. So Abaya responds with a question. Now, we're going to have to take our time with the question. It's not hard, but we just have to be patient. There's a braita that says, Bamed Dvar Mamurim. When were these words said? That you have to buy something of a higher kedusha, shelo hitnu, if no condition was made. Aval hitnu, but if a condition was made, afilu l'duchsusia muter. You can even use the money for duchsusia. Let me translate again, but I'm not explaining. Bamed Dvar Mamurim, when were these words said? Which words? That you have to buy something of a higher kedusha, shelo hitnu, if no condition was made. Aval hitnu, but if a condition was made, afilu duchsusia muter. You can even use it for duchsusia. I don't know what duchsusia is yet. We'll find out later. But I don't understand what happened here. What do you mean? If you didn't make a condition, then you have to use the money for higher kedusha. But if you made a condition, then you can use the money for a lower kedusha. Heichi Domi, the Gemara asks, what's the case? Ilema, if you're telling me, Shemachru, they sold the Aron Kodesh for $30,000. V'hoisiru, and they bought a Sefer Torah for 25, and they have 5,000 left. Ki hisnu mayhavi. What does it help me that they made a condition? Who did you make a condition with? When you sold the Aron Kodesh for $30,000, you told the person who's giving you the $30,000 that I'm making a condition? That if I can buy a Sefer Torah for 25, I should use the other 5 for whatever I want? Ki hisnu, even if you make that condition, mayhavi. Who made you the boss? When you sold Aron Kodesh for 30, you tell the buyer who's giving you $30,000, you should know that if I can buy a Sefer Torah for less, I want to use the rest of the money for what I want. How can you do that? Ki hisnu, even if you make a condition, mayhavi, who gave you the authority to take $5,000 of the Aron Kodesh money and use it for something else? Ella rather, shagavu v'hosiru. I know what it means. You had a campaign and you collected money for a Sefer Torah. And you collected $30,000, v'hosiru. And you actually bought the Sefer Torah for 25 and you have $5,000 extra. And Tama, the reason why you can use the other $5,000 for whatever you like, the hisnu, because you made a condition when you collected, you told the people we're collecting for a Sefer Torah, but if we buy the Sefer Torah for less, we should have the right to use the money for other purposes. Halai hisnu lo. But if you didn't make the condition at the time of the campaign, you can't. So this is a question against Rava. Rava said that when you collect money and you use part of the money to buy Sefer Torah, you can just independently use the rest of the money for what you want. But here it seems that only works if when you collected the money, you let the people know that if we have surplus money, we're going to use the money for other purposes and not for the Sefer Torah. So Abaya seems to be wrong. Abaya, who said that when you collect money and you have extra money, you can do with it what you want, is not true. It's only if when you collected it, you stipulated with the donors that you should be able to do what you want with the rest of the money. The Gemara says no. Abaya says, I'm right. When you collect money for a Sefer Torah and you buy the Sefer Torah for less, you can do whatever you want with the rest of the money. I mean, something for public use. But La'olam, the Braita was speaking Shemachru, where you sold the Aron Kodesh for 30, V'hotiru, and you have an extra $5,000 because you bought the Sefer Torah for 25. And V'hochi Kamar, and this is what the Braita is saying. Again, the question was, if you sold an Aron Kodesh for 30 and you bought a Sefer Torah for 25, what does condition mean? How can you use the other $5,000 for what you want? By Medvar Mamurim, when do you have to use the other $5,000 for a higher Kedusha? Shalohitnu Shiva Tove Ho'ir B'mamed Anshe Ho'ir. That's only if the 7 board members didn't make a condition in the presence or with the authority of the people of the city. I will hitnu Shiva Tuve Ir B'mamed Anshe Ho'ir. But if the 7 board members in the presence of or with the acknowledgement of the people of the city, they decided that they want to do whatever they want with the rest of the money, afila l'duchsusia nami muter. You can even use the money for duchsusia. So what emerges from the Gemara is that Abaye defended his position, that when you sell Aron Kodesh for 30 and you buy Sefer Torah for 25, you must use the 5 for higher Kedusha. But when you collect 30, even for a Sefer Torah, and you bought the Sefer Torah for 25, you can do what you want with the other 5, as long as it's for public use. You can't just waste it. However, even if you sold an Aron Kodesh for 30, and you got 25, and you have 5 left, there's a way that you can even use the 5 for anything else. If the sale of the Aron Kodesh was done by 7 board members with the authority of the city, because as we learned a couple of days ago, whoever gave the money originally for the Aron Kodesh, and when the Aron Kodesh was originally purchased, the money that was collected for the Aron Kodesh and the Aron Kodesh that was purchased was always done with the stipulation that the board members have the right to deconsecrate it. So the consecration of the money towards the Aron Kodesh and the consecration of the purchase of the Aron Kodesh was always made with the stipulation that the board members have the right to do afterwards what they want. So one more time, Abaye retains his position that when you collect money and you end up having surplus money, you can do what you want with the surplus money. But if you sold a Dover Shebekdusha and you end up having surplus money when you buy something higher, you have to use the surplus money also for something higher. But if the sale of the Aron Kodesh, for instance, was done by Shiva Tuva here by the 7 board members, then even then the surplus money can be used for whatever they designate it for. The only thing that's left is a minor issue. What's a duchsusia? Amalei Abaye lahumer Rabbanan. Abaye said to one of the rabbis, "They have a mesader matniyasa kameder Rav Sheshes." He used to present braitot in front of Rav Sheshes for Rav Sheshes to explain those braitot. So Abaye asked that rabbi, "Mi shmielach mi Rav Sheshes? Did you hear from Rav Sheshes my duchsusia? What's the translation of duchsusia?" Amar lei, so that Talmud Chacham said, "Hachi Amar Rav Sheshes." Rav Sheshes explained, "Parasha demata." It's the town horseman. There used to be a town horseman, a town crier. Whenever the government, the mayor, or somebody in town made a law, and they needed to spread the law around all over, they had this guy riding on a horse who shouted in every corner of town what the new law was. That's duchsusia. Okay. Amar Abaye says, Hilkach therefore, Haitzur v'merabanan, if you're a young scholar, the Shamalei Milta, if you hear something, you learn something, V'layada Pirusha, you don't know how to translate it. So Lishaila, you can ask, Kamei de Shchiach, Kamei de Rabbanan. Ask someone who hangs around a rabbi. Ask someone who is present usually in a place of scholars, because the lo efsher, it's impossible, the lo shmiale min gaver rabba. It's impossible that he didn't hear it at some point from a great man. If you remember earlier in Megillah, the Rabbanan had various words that they didn't know the translation of it, and they asked the maid in Rebbe's house. They didn't ask her. They heard the maid in Rebbe's house use the word, and from her use of the word, they figured out what the word meant. Because by being a maid in Rebbe's house, she picked up vocabulary, she picked up the knowledge of words and used them. And other people can learn things from her knowledge. So here too, Abaye asked, he didn't ask Rav Sheshes, he asked one of the Rabbanan that was Mesader Mataniyata, who organized Braitot in front of Rav Sheshet. Let me English this little piece. We started V'chein b'modreyan, which means the same with surplus money. Rava said, I think when I was explaining the Gemara, I reversed Abaye and Rava. I apologize. Rava says, we did not learn. Did not learn what? Did not learn that you have to use the extra money for higher Kedusha, only if you sold, and then you have leftover money. But Aval Gavu, but when you collected and you have leftover money, you can do with it what you want. This is Rava's opinion, not Abaye's, it's Rava's. That when you collect money and you used it, what you said you were going to use it for, and you have extra, you can do what you want with it. Abaye responds with a question. The Braita says, when are these words said? that you must use it for Har Kedusha if no condition was made. But if a condition was made, you can even use the money for Duchsusia. Heichidami, what's the case? If you say that they sold an object of Kedusha, and now Vahotiru, they have leftover money, but Ki Hitnu, if they make a condition Maihavi, what is it? How does it help to make a condition when you sell the Davar Shebekdusha? Rather, it's speaking where they collected money, and after the collection they used it, but they have leftover money. And the reason why you can use the money for Duchsusia is because you made a condition. But when you collected the money Lo Hitnu, you didn't make a condition, you could not use the money for whatever you want. The Gemara responds that Rava is right. Really, they sold an object of Kedusha, and now after they bought what they needed, Vahotiru, they have leftover money. And the Braita is saying, when do you have to use the money for Har Kedusha? When there was no condition made by the 7 board members in the presence or the authority of the people of the city. But if the 7 board members in the presence or with the authority of the people of the city sold the Aron Kodesh, even if now you have leftover money, you can even use it for Duchsusia. Afilu Duchsusia nami mutar. It's allowed. Abaye said to a rabbi who was organizing Braita in front of Rav Sheshet, did you hear from Rav Sheshet what's the translation of Duchsusia? He said, so said Rav Sheshet, it's the horseman of town. Abaye said, Hilkach, therefore, a tzurva mirabban, a young scholar, who hears something and doesn't know the explanation, should ask from someone who finds himself in front of the Rabbanan. Because it's impossible that he didn't hear the translation of this word from a great man. One of the things that you learn from this Gemara, and it comes up a number of times in Shas, that even when something is consecrated, but at the time of consecration, it's consecrated conditionally, then therefore afterwards it's easier to deconsecrate it, because you only consecrated it with a condition. This applies, there's a Gemaras like this in Shkolim and in Shvuos regarding Machzas HaShekel. Machzas HaShekel was a half shekel given for Kodesh, to use for Korbanos. But in the end, when there's surplus, you can use it for other stuff, because the people who gave it conditionally, that if it's not going to be needed, we can use it for other purposes. Anyway. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rab Meir. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rab Meir, B'nei Ha'ir, people of Toronto, Sheholchu L'ir Acheres, that came to Montreal, U'posku Aleim Tzedakah. And in Montreal, there was a tzedakah campaign where they obligated everybody to give, let's say, $100. Notnin. So the Torontonians that are here also must give $100, because nobody should suspect them that they're not giving when everybody here gives. But Kushahem Boen, when it's time for them to go back to Toronto, when they go back, Mevian Otanimohem, they can ask the Gabbai Tzedakah in Montreal to give them back the $100, and they'll use it for the poor people in Toronto. So they have to give the way everybody gives. But since they are Torontonians, they have a primary obligation to the people in their city. That's why I always say our tzedakah box in our Beit Knesset or funds should go to the fund that we have in school that helps out in case there's a need within our community, because the people of your own community come first. Tanya Nami Hachi, we also learned this in a Braita, B'nei U'ir, Torontonians, Shalchu L'ir Acheres, they went to another city, to Montreal, Upasku Aleim Tzedakah, and there was a tzedakah campaign where they had the right to impose an obligation of tzedakah. Notnin, they have to give the $100, for instance. Ukshein Boin, when they go back to Toronto, Mevian Ota Imohem. However, the Braita says, but v'yochid shalach lir acheres. What happens if it's not a group of Torontonians, it's only an individual? Upaskol of tzedakah, and this Torontonian is here in Montreal as an individual, and he gave $100, tinosan le'oiseir. He has to leave it here in Montreal, because an individual who's here, he for now becomes part of the city here, and therefore his tzedakah belongs here in Montreal. If it's a group, they don't become nullified to the Montrealers. Therefore, when the group goes back, they take the money back and use it in Toronto. So the Gemara tells us a story that contradicts everything we said. Rav Huna Gazer Tanita. Rav Huna declared a fast day in the city where Rav Huna lived. Al legabe Rav Chana bar Chaniloi So who came to Rav Huna's city? Rav Chana bar Chaniloi v'chol b'nei Motei. And all the people of the town, of the village, where Rav Chana bar Chaniloi lived, because they were a suburb of Rav Huna's city, so they all came into the big city to participate on the fast day. Ramu alayu tzedakah v'avu. Rav Huna, or the Gabbai Tzedakah in Rav Huna's city, imposed a tzedakah campaign, v'avu, and Rav Chana bar Chaniloi and his congregants, who now were in Rav Huna's city, also gave. Kibo lemeite, when they wanted to go back to the village, Amrule, they said to Rav Huna, Not v'lan mar, sir, give us back our money. V'nezel, we will go, unefarnes ba'aniyeh matin, and we will support the poor people in our city. As we said before, that if we're a group of people, when we go back, we take our money back. Amar Luhu, Rav Huna said, Tanina, it was taught in the Braita, V'medvar mamurim, when do a group of people take their money back and use it in their own city? Only b'she'ein sham chaver ir, only if there isn't a scholar who's responsible for the needs of the city. Aval yesham chaver ir, but if there's a scholar who is responsible for the needs of the city, tinasin lechaver ir. Even when you're a group of people, you still leave it with that scholar to use for the big city, and v'kol sheken, and all the more so, dani didi viditchu alai smichi. The poor people in my city, and even the poor people in your village, rely on me. So if you leave it with me, I'm going to support everybody, both the people in the city and the people in the village. So, in other words, so let's go through. There are three rules. One is, if an individual comes to a big city and they impose tzedakah, the individual has to give and leave it there. If a group of people come to another city and they impose a tzedakah campaign, they have to give, but when they go back, they take it with them. But if in the big city there is a chaver ir, there is somebody who's the head of the city, which means it was understood that it's being given under his authority, and especially if the person who leads the big city is responsible for the welfare of not only the big city but also the suburb, then even if you're a group, you leave the money with him. Mishnah, Ein mochren et shel rabim liyachid. If there's a synagogue that belongs to the public, you're not allowed to sell it to an individual. Because you're lowering it from its kedusha. Something that belongs to the public has more kedusha than something that belongs to an individual. Amrulo, so the Chachamim disagreed with Rav Meir, and they said, Imkain, if so, aflo mi'er gedola li'erktana. Then perhaps if something belonged to a large city, you shouldn't sell it to a smaller city, because maybe the larger city has more kedusha than the smaller city. The Gemara asks, Shapir ka'amri le Rabbanan le Rabbi Meir. Didn't the Rabbanan have a good argument against Rabbi Meir? If you prohibit selling something from the public to an individual, shouldn't we likewise prohibit selling something from a larger city to a smaller one? Ver Rabbi Meir, and how will Rabbi Meir answer that? Rabbi Meir says, Meir gedolo li'erktana. If it's a big city and it's being sold to a small city, meikara kadisha hashtanami kadisha. It was kodesh before and it was kodesh after. Let me explain. If you have a shul that has 100 people, or a city that has 100 people in the shul, so you say Kaddish and you say Kedusha. And if you have a small city that has 20 people in the shul, you still say Kaddish and Kedusha. So Meikara, from the beginning of the big city, Kaddish was holy. Hashtanami Kedusha, now it's also Kaddish. But Mirabim Liyochid, but if you sell something that belongs to the public to an individual, like a Kedusha, because an individual can't say Kaddish and Kedusha. So therefore, don't sell something from the public to an individual, because you're taking a place which was used for Kaddish and Kedusha for things that only a tzibur can do, and now, if it belongs to an individual, it won't be able to be done. V'Rabbanan. So don't the Rabbanan understand that distinction? That from the public to an individual, you're diminishing its Kedusha, because you won't be able to say Kaddish and Kedusha, but from a large city to a small city, it shouldn't matter, because you can still say Kaddish and Kedusha. The Rabbanan felt, if we need to be concerned that you're downgrading it from public to individual, then kihai gavna, in this case, from a large public to a small public, nami also ikalamechesh, we should be concerned. Mishum berov am hadrat melech. There's a pasuk in Mishlei, Perik Yudalid, that the more people there are, it's more beautiful for the king. So you shouldn't lower it from a large city where it's more beautiful for the king to a small city where it's less beautiful. It's true, it's not the same. If you go from the public to an individual, you're lowering it from a place where Kedusha can be said to a place where Kedusha cannot be said. But still, say the Rabbanan, if you're concerned about that, you shouldn't sell from a large city to a small city either, because the more people there are, the greater honor it is for Hashem. So you shouldn't diminish the honor of Hashem by selling it to a smaller city. Mishnah, Ein mochrin beit knesset. Let's say if I own a beit knesset, I may not sell it, and I'm speaking to you. Let's say each one of you should imagine as if I'm talking to you. Each one of you, you'll see why in a minute. I can't sell a beit knesset, ella rather al tanai, on condition. I have to tell you, Shem Yirtzu, if I the seller want, Yachziruhu, you'll return it to me. Divrei Reb Meir, these are the words of Reb Meir. I own a Beit Knesset and I'm short of money. So I'm going to sell it to you for $1 million. So the Beit Knesset will now be yours and I get $1 million. Reb Meir says I must make a condition that you should know whenever I have $1 million free and I come to you and I want to buy my Beit Knesset back, you have to sell it back to me. The reason for this is because I'm showing that I'm selling the Beit Knesset reluctantly. I'm upset, I'm short of money, and I couldn't help it, so I'm selling it. But by putting in the condition that whenever I want, I can come back to you and give you back your money and get back my Beit Knesset, it shows that I really want it back. The Chacham disagree with Reb Meir, and they say, Mocher and Otom Mimkar Olam. I can sell it to you, sold forever, permanent sale. Chutz me'arba dvarim, there are 4 things that I cannot sell the Beit Knesset for. Lemerchatz, I can't sell it to you to use as a bathhouse. Or bursiki, I can't sell it to you as a tannery. L'tevila, I can't sell it to you to use as a mikveh. L'beit hamayim, and I can't sell it to you to use as a laundry. And Rabbi Yehuda is even more lenient, and he says, Mochrin oto, I can sell it l'shem chotzer, just as an empty space, how many square feet it has. V'halokeach, mashayirtze yaseh, and the buyer can do what he wants. In order to understand the next piece of Gemara, I have to explain it first very carefully, slowly, and I hope I can do it clearly enough that everybody should understand. I'm going to use each one of you as an example. I'm going to use a name. Neither of you is called Chaim, but I'm using the name Chaim. I sold my Beit Knesset to Chaim. Chaim gave me $1 million, and I gave him the Beit Knesset. According to Reb Meir, I wrote a condition. Dear Chaim, if I ever have $1 million free, I'm going to come to you, give you back your $1 million, and you're going to give me back my Beit Knesset. That's the condition upon which I sell you the Beit Knesset. The condition is that I can ask you and force you to sell it back to me. So let's say that happens, and I actually come up with $1 million, and I go to Chaim and I say, Chaim, remember, we made a deal, it's in the contract that I have the right to buy it back. Here's your $1 million back, and give me back my Beit Knesset. And he has to give it back. So to the unsophisticated eye, what happened here was I sold it. I sold the Beit Knesset to him, gave Chaim the Beit Knesset and got $1 million, and then maybe a year later, he sold it back to me. He gave me back the Beit Knesset, and I gave him back the $1 million. So there was a sale first, and a year later, there was a sale back. But somebody who's a little more sophisticated looks at this and says, wait a minute, I don't think this was sale A, and a year later there was sale B. That's not really what this transaction was. Let's take a closer look. You see, Heinrich Singer needed $1 million. He was short of money. So he went to Chaim and he said, Chaim, lend me $1 million. Chaim said, I'll lend you $1 million. How do I know you're going to pay me back? So I said to Chaim, look, I own a Beit Knesset which is worth $1 million. So I'm going to give you the Beit Knesset and you'll have it as security. You'll lend me $1 million and you'll have the Beit Knesset as security. You'll be sure. Worst comes to worst, if I don't pay you, you'll keep the Beit Knesset. But since it's only a loan, so one day, a year later, when I have $1 million, I give you back the $1 million, I repay the loan, I get back my security. So wait a minute. So what really did happen here? Was it that I sold him the Beit Knesset and a year later he sold it back to me? Or if you make a condition that I can force you to sell it back to me, then that's not really a sale. That's really just a loan. I borrowed money from you, and the fact that I gave you the Beit Knesset was just a way of giving you security. And then afterwards, when I give you back your $1,000,000, you gave me back the security. It was just a loan. So what's the difference how you call it? But during the year that you had the Beit Knesset, you used it. You used it for various purposes. And let's say the rental value of that Beit Knesset every month is $1,000. So at the end of the year, you had $12,000 worth of use. If it's a loan, you lent me $1,000,000. You got your $1,000,000 back at the end of the year, but you also got free use of a Beit Knesset for a whole year, which is worth $12,000. That's interest. You ended up getting something that's worth $12,000 because you lent me $1,000,000 for a year. Isn't that prohibited? And that's a dispute. There's a dispute whether this is called interest or not. Why? Because what happens if I never pay you back? If I never pay you back, then you keep the Beit Knesset. Then it's a sale. So this transaction can either end up one way or the other way. If I never give you back the money, then you end up keeping the Beit Knesset forever. Then it's a sale and a permanent sale, and it's over. If I end up giving you back the money, and you give me back the Beit Knesset, then it now becomes evident that it was a loan, and as a loan, you ended up with $12,000 worth of use. Is that prohibited or not? This is called tzad echad beribit. It may end up ribit, it may not end up ribit. If I never give you back the money, then it's a sale, and there's no ribit. If I do give you back the money, and you give me back the Beit Knesset, then not only did you get your $1,000,000 back, but you also got $12,000 of synagogue use. So, tzad echad beribit. If it's possible, it'll be a sale, or it's possible to be ribit. Is that prohibited, or is it allowed? That's a dispute. There's another possibility that what happens if I give you back the money, you give me back the Beit Knesset, what happens if you now give me the $12,000 in the end? Well, it sounds like it's okay, but maybe not. Because meanwhile, you were taking interest. As you use the Beit Knesset every month, which is worth $1,000, you were collecting interest. And in the end, you're just giving it back. Are you allowed to collect interest and just give it back later? So let's read the Gemara. Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, Heichi how dairiba, how can Chaim live in the Beit Knesset? Ha'havila ribit. In the end, when he gets his money back, he has gotten interest. He has gotten 12 months of $12,000 worth of use. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Meir, Beshitat Rabbi Yehuda Amora. Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Yehuda. The Amaru says, Tzad echad beribit is mutter. If one side could be ribbit, but the other side will not be ribbit, meaning, if I never give back the money, then there's no ribbit. It was a sale. I got the $1,000,000, Chaim got the Beit Knesset, and we lived happily ever after. But the other side is, if I do give back the money, and I get back the Beit Knesset, then he got back his $1,000,000, and he now has $12,000 worth of use for free. That could be ribbit. So is that mutter or aser? Rabbi Yehuda holds it's mutter. It's allowed. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braita, Harei shahaya noshe b'chaveiro mana. Chaim is demanding from me mana, $100, for instance. Call it $1,000,000. Doesn't matter. Mana is an amount of money. Chaim is demanding money from me. I owe him money. I don't have money. V'asalo sadeu mecher. So I tell Chaim, I'm going to make my field as if it's a sale. In other words, I'm going to give you my field, and eventually, in a year from now, if I don't pay you, you'll keep my field. So, bisman shamocher ochel peirot muter. As long as I keep eating the fruit. So, Chaim only has a field that in the end of the year, if I don't pay him, he can keep it. But I'm going to eat the fruit a whole year, then it's allowed. Because Chaim is not going to, if I do pay Chaim back the $1,000,000, and I get my field back, Chaim didn't get anything extra, because the whole year I ate the fruit. But lokeach ochel peirot aser. But if Chaim's going to eat the fruit all year, and in the end I'm going to give him back the $1,000,000 that I owe him, and he's going to give me back the field, that's prohibited. Because in the end, Chaim got back his money, and he also got a whole year's worth of fruit. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Afilu lokeach ochel peirot muter. Even if Chaim eats the fruit a whole year, it's also muter. Why? Because it wasn't sure that this was going to be ribbit. In case I never pay Chaim back, then the field was his. If the field was his, he's entitled to eat the fruit. It's his field. Rabbi Yehuda wants to prove his point that it is allowed, and he says, Masa bebaitut ben Zunan. Let's say there was a story with a man called Baitut ben Zunan, that's me. Sha'asa sadeu mecher, I owed somebody money. I was Baitut ben Zunan, I owed somebody money. So I told the guy who I owed money to, here's my field, and buy my field against the money that I owe you. And it was done al pi Reb Lozer ben Azariah. And Reb Lozer ben Azariah was the rabbi who signed off on this transaction. V'lokeach ochel peirot. And the guy who I owed money to was eating the produce. So you see that it's allowed. And even if in the end I give him back the $1 million that I owe him, I buy to Ben Zunan, pay him back the $1 million, and he gives me back my field, it's allowed, even though he ate a whole year's worth of fruit. So you see that it's tzad echad beribit is mutter. That if it's one side, it might end up as a ribbit. If I give back the money and he gives me back the field, he ended up getting a year's worth of produce. On the other hand, if I never pay him back, it's a sale. You see that it's allowed. Amrulo, so the Chachamim said to Rabbi Yehuda, Misham Raya, from there you're bringing a proof. Mocher ochel perot hoy v'lo lokeach. The story is perfect, except you got it upside down. It was Baitut ben Zonan that was eating the fruit a whole year. The one that he owed the money to didn't eat an apple. He never got anything. The only thing that the guy who Baitut ben Zonan owed money to was that he got a document that if Baitut ben Zonan never pays, and a year later he can keep the field. But the fruit was constantly being consumed by Baitut ben Zonan, because the lender was not allowed to eat the fruit because it might end up as a ribbit. My ben hayu, what's the dispute all about? Well, I told you. It's sadachot beribitika ben hayu. The difference is, if on one side it may turn out to be interest, on the other side it may end up being a purchase and a sale. Mar savar tzadachot beribit muter. Rabbi Yehuda says that one-sided ribbit is muter. The only time interest is prohibited is only if it's clear-cut ribbit. I'm lending you $1 million, and you have to give me back 1,100,000, and that's it. That's aser. But if a transaction could end up either being a sale or a loan, and should it end up as a loan, there will be a ribbis issue, that's muter. Imar savar, but the Chacham holds harechel beribit aser, that if even if it only ends up ribbit one way, if I pay back the money and I get back the Beit Knesset, or if I pay back the money, I get back the field, and you end up having the use of the Beit Knesset for 12 months, or produce for 12 months, that is prohibited. Rav Amarava says, the Kuli Alma, everybody, Tulmon, holds Tzarechel Beribit Aser. If it's possible that it will end up as ribbit, it's Aser. V'hacha here, ribbit al manas lahachzir kabenayu. The dispute is that if Chaim will give me back $12,000, when I give him back the money, and he gives me back the Beit Knesset, he'll give me back the $12,000. When Baitut ben Zonan pays back the money to the guy he owed it to, and the guy gives back the field to Baitut ben Zonan, the guy will pay back for the fruit. Is that allowed? Mar Savar Rabbi Yehuda holds ribbit almanat lahachzir muter. He was allowed to consume interest during the year, as long as at the end of the year, if the transaction ends up being a loan, you just return the ribbit. Umar Savar, the Chacham holds it's aser. So the Mishnah that says that when I sell a Beit Knesset, I have to sell it on the stipulation that if I want it back, you must sell it back to me, either holds tzad echad beribit is muter, and therefore if I never buy it back, it's a sale, so therefore no matter what happens, it's allowed. Or it might be that if I do give you the money back, I get my Beit Knesset back, you're going to have to give me back $12,000 for the ribbis, for the use of the Beit Knesset you had all year. Okay, the Gemara shir took a little bit longer today than I anticipated. You know what? Let's English it. Starting from Chav Zayin Amid Aleph, I have it as 5 lines from the bottom, and I'll translate word for word to the best of my ability. Please follow with all you got. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Meir, people, multiple people of a city that went to another city, and they imposed upon them tzedakah, they need to give, but when the people go back, they bring it back with them, and they support the poor people in their own city. The Torontonians take their money back. We learned in a Braita also Hochi Kamsa, people in Toronto, people in a city that came to another city like Montreal, and the people in Montreal imposed upon them tzedakah, they give, and when they come back, they take the money back with them. The Braita continues, but an individual who goes to another city, and tzedakah was imposed upon him, he must give it and use it for the poor people in the city that he came to. because as an individual, he becomes nullified and included in the city that he came to. Rav Huna declared a fast day, and Rav Chana bar Chaniloi and all the people of Rav Chana bar Chaniloi's village all came to Rav Huna's city. Ramu alayhu, they imposed upon them tzedakah and v'yahavu. Rav Chana bar Chaniloi and his villagers all gave. Ki bo'u, when they needed lemete to go back, they said to Rav Huna, not v'lanmar, sir, give it back to us. We will go and support with it the poor people Matin of our city. So Rav Huna said, we learned in a Braita, Bamed Dvarim Amurim, when are these words said that you take the money back? Be'ein she'ein sham, when there was no leader of the city. There was no scholar who is responsible for all the affairs of the city. But if there's a scholar who is responsible for all the affairs of the city, you leave it with that scholar. V'kol shekain, and all the more so, because the poor people of my city, Didi, and Ditchu, the people of your city, Alai Smichi, they all rely on me. So even if you leave the money with me, the poor people in your city will be supported. The Mishnah says you can't sell a Beit Knesset that belongs to the public to an individual, because Moridin, you're lowering it from its Kedusha. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. The Chachamim said, if so, then also not from a large city to a small city. The Gemara, Shapir, isn't that well said? Shapir Kamrilei, didn't they say well, the Rabbanan to Rabbi Meir, that if you can't sell from a public to a private, you shouldn't sell from a large city to a small? And the answer is Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir, and what will he answer? He says from a large city to a small city, before it was Kodesh, now it's also Kodesh, because you can say Kaddish and Kedusha. But from the public to an individual, you're losing the Kedusha, you're losing Kaddish and Kedusha. Why don't the Rabbanan agree with that distinction? They say, if you're concerned about lowering it from the public to an individual, then kihai gavna, in such a case, from a large public to a small one, nam yikal mechesh, he should also be concerned, because berov am hadrat melech, the more people there are, the more beautiful it is for the king. Ein mochrin, we can't celebrate Knesset, or I can't celebrate Knesset only on condition that if I want to, the buyer, Chaim, must return it, and I'll give him back his money. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. The Chachamim say I can sell it as a permanent sale, except for 4 purposes. I can't sell it to be used as a merchatz, a bathhouse, or a bursiki, a tannery, or tvila for a mikveh, or for a bet hamayim for a laundry. And Rabbi Yehuda is even more lenient, and he says you can sell it as a courtyard, as how many square feet it is, and the buyer can do with it whatever he wants. The Gemara asks, I'm not going to explain it over, I hope you remember, I'm just doing words. According to Reb Meir, how can Chaim, the buyer, live in it? Ha'havila ribbit, but it's going to be ribbit. And when I give him back the money and he gives me back the Beit Knesset, he has gained $12,000 of use in the Beit Knesset. So Rabbi Yochanan said that Rabbi Meir, who allows it, is going according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says, Tzad echad beribit muter. If there's 2 possibilities, one possibility is it remains a sale forever after, and the other possibility is that I get it back, so therefore it was a loan, and only on the side that it was a loan will it be ribbis, that's allowed. Because we learned in a Braita, someone was demanding from his friend money, a large amount of money. Again, Chaim was demanding money from me. So I made my field into a sale. I gave my field to Chaim and I said, look, here's the field. If I don't pay you in a year from now, you'll keep the field. When I eat the produce, it's allowed. Because even if I give him back the money and he gives me back the field, but I was eating the produce, he never got anything extra. But if Chaim eats the produce, it's prohibited. Because in the end, if I give him back the money, he's gotten all his money back and he got a year's worth of produce. Rabbi Yehuda says even when Chaim is eating the produce, it's allowed. And Rabbi Yehuda said, in fact, I want to prove my point, there was a man by the name of Baitut ben Zunan who owed money. And he told the guy who he owed the money to, I'm giving you my field as a sale. And Al-Pi Rav Lozer ben Azariah, Rav Lozer ben Azariah was the rabbi who signed off on this transaction. And it was the buyer, it's the guy who received the field who was eating the produce. Ochel Peiret Hoya. So you see that even though Baitut ben Zonan could have given back the money, and the guy would have given Baitut back his field, it was allowed. So they said to Rabbi Yehuda, Misham Raya, from there you bring your proof. It's not true. You have the story wrong. Mocher, Baitut ben Zunan, was Ochel Peiret Hoya, was eating the produce, and not the buyer. It's not the lender of the money. It's not the buyer of the field who is eating the produce. What's the difference between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim? Whether if one side is ribbit, Ika benayu, that's the difference. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he holds sadach b'ribbit muter. If it only ends up being ribbit on one side of the possibility, but on the other side it ends up being a sale, it's allowed. And Marsover, the Chacham hold that tzadach b'ribbit is also. If one side can end up as ribbit, it is prohibited. Rava says everyone agrees that one-sided ribbit is usher, but here what's going to happen is the one who gets his money back is going to return the ribbit. He's going to return the $12,000 for the Beit Knesset, or he's going to return the value of the produce. So ribbit al menat, on the condition lahachzir, to return it, is the dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Marsav, Rabbi Yehuda holds that collecting ribbit on the condition that if you get your money back, you're going to give the ribbit back, it's allowed, and the Chachamim hold it's prohibited. We spent some extra time in Gemara this morning because there was a more complex piece. I hope everybody understood it. And now I'm going to do a little bit of Haggadah Shel Pesach with you. I'm going to start from Avodah Mayinu. In Haggadah, the answer to the child is, the reason why we have symbols of slavery and symbols of freedom is because Avodah Mayinu